going, everybody? My name is Ian and you are watching Drive MX5 channel. And recently I've noticed that my gas mileage in the Miata hasn't been quite as good as it should be, and I've also gotten some intermittent power loss. So today we're going to be changing the spark plugs on this car, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So changing the spark plugs in these Miatas, or really any front engine 4-cylinder car, is quite simple. They're usually right here at the top. These are your spark plug wires. You got your first, second, third, and fourth cylinder spark plugs right under there. But there are a few precautions that need to be taken before you start this job. The first being, make sure you do this on an engine that is completely cold, because these cars and many other cars have aluminum cylinder heads. And the problem with that is that aluminum is a very soft metal. So if you try to remove the spark plugs while the engine is hot, the aluminum cylinder head has expanded around the spark plugs, and the spark plugs have likely expanded inside of the spark plug hole. And so as you're trying to untighten them, the threads can sort of dig into each other, and you can actually strip the threads of these aluminum cylinder heads very easily. There's no way that that can really be repaired, and that actually happened to a friend of mine. So be very careful and make sure your engine is completely cold before you start this process. So the first step is going to be removing these spark plug wires, and to do that you're going to want to grab here at the base. Never pull by the wire, because you could accidentally rip the wire out and make it loose. So make sure you grab here at the base and just pull each one out like that, and then you can get to the spark plugs, which are right down there. Now for this job, you're also going to make sure you have a spark plug socket. Different cars have different sizes, but the Miata does use a 5/8, so that's what I have here. Now, spark plug socket differs from a normal one in that it's made and designed so that when the spark plug is inserted, it won't interfere with the ratchet. Some of them may use a magnet at the base to also hold this, so that way it doesn't get stuck down there in the cylinder head. But either way, you want to make sure you have one of these. It just makes the job a lot easier. So here are the old plugs from the engine. They look pretty nasty, which is no surprise, considering they've been in the car for a little while and my engine isn't exactly the healthiest. It does burn quite a bit of oil, so you can definitely tell with some of the buildup on some of these plugs here. And just to show you a close-up of the difference between the old plug and the new one, see how this one, the electrode I believe it's called, is nice and square. This one, it's really worn down. It's more of a conical shape, so definitely need to be replaced. Hopefully I'll notice the difference with the new plugs. Now, one thing you must absolutely do when installing new plugs is put some anti-seize lubricant on the thread. This will prevent the threads from getting stuck in the cylinder head, and it'll make it a lot easier to remove these plugs for next time. So make sure you use some of this, and it is well worth the peace of mind just to ensure that you won't have any issues later on. So another thing you want to do when installing the new spark plugs is make sure that this gap is correct. Now, the specification for these Miatas is 40 to 44 thousandths, and these are supposedly pre-gapped. So right out of the box you don't need to do anything, but it's always wise to check to make sure the gap is correct. If it's too big or too small, then you might not get any spark or a weak spark, and then you'll just have the same issues that you had before, except maybe even worse. So you're going to want to either take a feeler gauge or the coin style spark plug gap tools and use this to measure the gap. I have an 18 and a 22 thousandths to make sure that it meets on the lower end, which it looks like it just does. There's a little bit of resistance, which is just fine. So this is right about a 40 thousandth spark plug gap, and that should work for our application. The other thing you want to do is make sure you install some anti-seize lubricant on the threads, so that way the threads of the spark plug won't dig into the aluminum threads in the cylinder head and they won't get stuck. It'll make it a lot easier to remove the spark plug next time, and you won't have to worry about damage to the spark plug itself or the cylinder head. Lastly, you always want to hand tighten these all the way until it bottoms out. Make sure that they're not cross-threaded, and then from there, it says on the box you want to do another 1/2 to 2/3 of a turn. We know to use this diagram over here because of the type of washer that they put on the spark plug. Just make sure you do not over tighten them. It's very easy, and you can cause damage to the cylinder head once again by over tightening these spark plugs. Alright, now the last thing you want to do is take a little bit of this dielectric grease and put it inside the spark plug boots. What this will do is it will prevent dirt and contaminants, things like water and oil, from getting inside the boots. It also just generally improves the conductivity of the connections. Alright, this should be good. Let's go ahead and start her up, make sure she runs right. Alright, so the engine already sounds so much smoother just on startup for doing a spark plug change. So I'm really hoping that this will improve the gas mileage and performance of the engine and just help it run a lot better. So for those of you who may not have done this job before, or were just trying to look up a spec such as the spark plug gap for these Miatas, I hope this video helped. If it did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the latest videos that I post. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.